Patrick Cooch from the Carlton Footy Club. You're listening to the Coaches Panel.
James Walker here from the Brisbane Lions.
Jason Johannesson from the Western Bulldogs.
Luke Parker here from the Sydney Swans.
It's Rory Sloane here from the Adelaide Crows, and you're listening to the Coaches Panel.
Max Shaw, Melbourne Football Club.
This is Nat Fyfe from the Fremantle Footy Club, and you're listening to the Coaches Panel.
Getting to the end of January and almost ending the 20s of the 50 most relevant. Hello, it's MJ from the Coaches Panel. I hope you are well. And over the past 4 seasons, Zach Merrett has been among one of the most beloved and popular premiums in a majority of our formats. Will the trend continue in 2020? Or has some of the shine gone off Zach Merrett? To talk about this Essendon star, I got Jimmy on. Hello, buddy.
Hello, MJ. Hello, listeners.
It's nice to have you on. Just 24 years old, this superstar of the Essendon Footy Club. And while it's not his personal best season, there was some moments of 2019 that were a thing of beauty for those that were on Zach Merrett. As a midfielder, his best score last year was a 143 in AFL Fantasy against the Kangaroos. And then a personal best of SuperCoach in his career was against Brisbane, a 155. Not a bad ceiling for a guy that's kind of considered as a DT and AFL Fantasy player only. In terms of his seasonal averages, just over the 108 marker in AFL Fantasy and DreamTeam, and a 105.6 in SuperCoach. In that format, going to set you back just over $573,000, a touch over $800K in AFL Fantasy, and $782,400 in DreamTeam. Jimmy, when we talk about Zach Merrett, those that have played fantasy footy for a long time probably most fondly remember him from the year of the Essendon drug supplement saga where their entire midfield was depleted. And with Zach Merrett as a forward, we got an absolute superstar who went 110 plus across the formats.
Oh, those were glory days, weren't they? The rest of his teammates are back this year, and as they have been for a couple of years, and his scoring's dropped off a little bit, but they're still solid numbers.
Yeah, look, he's still doing okay. Last year in the AFL, he ranked inside the top 15 in the league for inside 50s, total disposals, tackles, handballs, and uncontested possessions. Was going about 28 touches a game, 4 marks, 5 tackles, and those inside 50s we talked about, averaged 5 inside 50s a game. He started to develop a little bit more of an inside part to his game this past year too, didn't he, Jimmy? We started to not just see the outside cherry picking of Zach Merrett, which for fantasy coaches we love, but we did start to see some two-dimensional elements of him in and out of the contest.
He's definitely grown as a player. He used to be very much that sort of outside seagull. I don't want to compare him to Brandon Ellis, but it was a not too dissimilar a role at times in a lot of ways, but he's getting a lot more of that inside now. He's and he does run both ways, which is nice. So I think those sort of things are helpful. Maybe a little more from a SuperCoach point of view, and we don't care how he's getting the ball as long as he's getting it. But from an inside point of view, it'll be interesting to see just what that role looks like now with the way that Essendon have recruited this year.
Yeah, it's a good point. When we talk about his fantasy footy season last year, he averaged 108 in AFL Fantasy and DreamTeam. Played every game, got yourself 15 tons across that season. Not a bad statistic. Just about half of them were over the 120 marker. And if you timed your run right with Zach Merrett, didn't have a great first game, got the Matty DeBoer tag. He was not the only person to suffer from that during the season. But if you timed your run with him pretty nicely, you got some good returns because round 4 to 15, if you jumped on him, your lowest score was 99. Not a bad run in there. He had only 2 scores below 92 all year. Both are in the 50s. One of them was that Matt DeBoer tag in round 1. The other, he spent the majority of the second term off against Sydney, undergoing a concussion test. So, look, really, 2 games were the difference, and one of them was because of an injury. Gosh, he's pretty consistent in that format.
Well, that's it. And if you take those 2 games out, you can't take, especially the DeBoer one.
You can't do that.
That's hard. That's going to happen. But when you look at those figures as a whole, if you're getting 15 hundreds out of 22, that's not bad. When 5 of the remaining 7, I'm pretty sure we're at 90 or above, correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, between 92 and 99.
Yeah, so if his low scores for the year, that one game aside against DeBoer, are in the 90s, gee, that's nice. There's no risk really, in picking him from that point of view.
He's not.
Knowing that even if he doesn't go at his best, he's still going to give you a reasonable enough outcome. It's not going to kill your score week to week.
Yeah, it's certainly true. In SuperCoach, he had an average of 106 across last year, 14 tons, half of them over 120. And like in DreamTeam and AFL Fantasy, just the two really disappointing scores with the two under 80. If you want to look back at his 2018 numbers, 14 tons in DreamTeam and Fantasy, 6 of them over 120, while in SuperCoach, outscored in terms of the frequency of hundreds, got 15 last year, and in 2018, rather should I say, in 4 over 120. Really, let's look at him over a 4-year window of time, because that's what we want to look when we're talking about these premiums. We don't just want 1 year of data. We want to see that they can back it up and back it up. Over the past 4 years, he's missed just one game. Durability box, check. 87 of a possible 88 games. Okay, that's good. Here's what he's done. In that period of time, he's had 62 AFL Fantasy and Dream Team tons over a 4-year period. That is 171% of games. You'll take that. And in SuperCoach, not as strong, but still good. 52 tons in the past 87 games, going at 64% of games. In terms of his average over that 4-year stretch, 111 in AFL Fantasy and Dream Team, and a 106 in SuperCoach. He just ticks every box.
I just want to highlight on that before you keep going, MJ. So you're telling me that only, on average, over 4 years, 7 weeks out of 10, he scores 100?
Yeah.
So 3 weeks out of 10, he's not scoring 100.
Yeah.
But his average is still over 110 in that period.
Yeah.
That's a very nice ceiling, propping up those numbers.
Yeah, ceiling, and that scoring floor, as we highlighted, is really, really high. So, unlike others, yes, we can talk about that tag game with Matty DeBoer. Yes, he, like almost every player in the league, can be shut down and stopped. Dusty had it last year. Dangerfield had it last year. Tim Kelly had it last year. We could do it with all the elite players. Pretty much all of them got negated by varying taggers across the game. Cripps we talked about just a few days ago. But if you're getting numbers like that, even with those heavy tag games, he's not going to hurt you. And he's not getting talked about at all this preseason.
It's extraordinary, isn't it? He's in, what, about 6%, 7% of AFL fantasy teams at the minute?
I think it's even less in SuperCoach as well. And so we've got this guy who's got 4 years of history that's shown he's that 105 plus in SuperCoach, 110 plus in Dream Team and Fantasy. And yet there's just no love for him this year. What is it about it, Jimmy? Have we got better options this year? Is the tag the concern? Is it a lack of ceiling? What's the flag that people are scared off by?
I don't think it's that people are scared off too much. I think it's just that there's new flavours of the month. Everyone's talking about Dunkley at the minute. Yeah. You've got Mitchell coming back from a year off, and the GWS lads are any one of them is a worthy choice. And I don't think there'd be a team out there that doesn't have at least one GWS mid in it at the minute. Yeah. And I think when you look at that, and that most teams are only going to have maybe 4 or 5 gun mids at most to start the year, people are just overlooking him. Yeah. Rightly or wrongly, and I think wrongly, just quietly. They're just not factoring him in as a valid option at the minute. But I would strongly encourage people to take another look.
Yeah, look, AFL Fantasy and Dream Team, without doubt, is certainly the format that he's been at his best. But someone amongst the SuperCoach community might go, well, he doesn't have the ceiling, he's not this. Well, again, remember, he got his best ever score last season against Brisbane, a 155. If that's not ceiling, yes, it's not the 190 Cripps and the 200 Dunkley, but if that doesn't classify as a scoring ceiling, I think we're missing the mark.
Oh, it doesn't. I mean, I kind of get the argument for SuperCoach too, because these gun mids in SuperCoach, your Cripps and your Dunkleys, your Josh Kelly types, when they go big, they go real big. Yes. And that does prop up their overall average. And if you manage to knock a captaincy band on them for that particular week, it's that's extraordinary. And Merrett has those good games where he'll get the 140s and 150s, and you can't complain at them. But there is that extra level above. So I can understand people's hesitation in that SuperCoach format from that point of view, and that he's going to be a solid choice. And if he's sitting there as your M6, M7, M8 by the end of the year, happy days. You can't go too wrong. But whether he's the option to start with, if you're picking him, you are banking on him going that next step above what he did last year.
Yeah, you do need him to pretty much go 110 in SuperCoach, given what you're paying at. There's some guys, maybe we'll see them in the 50 most relevant, like a Stephen Cornelio, that's shown he can do that. You do, because of the higher scoring ceiling and the amount of big premium options we've got through there. Yeah, you need a 110 out of him. I totally agree. Otherwise, it's
comfortably.
Yeah.
But when you're looking at Dream Team, and when he does regularly, again, get those 140s, 150s, there aren't many that can do that on as consistent a basis as he can. And as you said, even just last year, never mind those previous 2 or 3 years before where he was really at that top handful in the game.
Yeah.
That 14-week stretch that he went on there was that was phenomenal. If you landed that, well, you wouldn't be thinking too hard about him this year. You'd be locking him in straight away.
Yes, true.
If you didn't have him, I'd go take another look at those numbers. They're for that Dream Team and fantasy format, I think he's well worth a look.
Yeah, look, he started to show in some games. He's starting to work through a tag. Guys like Jack Steele and George Hewitt didn't have as big an impact on him. Yes, Matty DeBoer got his scalp in round 1, but as the year went on, the negating midfield, it wasn't as impactful in getting those 50 scores for him there. He does have a pretty difficult buy round if you're ranking him up against some other big names, guys that we've already seen in the 50 most relevant in Andrew Gaff and Lockie Neal. It's come off that round, as does an Elliot Yeo and a Patrick Dangerfield. So it's not exactly lacking in midfield premiums, but it's also not bustling for them like it is in, say, a round 14, where we've got the GWS, the Western Bulldogs, the Adelaide Crows, Hawthorn, where it just feels like we've got 10 options there. It's only a 4 or 5, so maybe he's a good little option, whether it be to start or upgrade. One thing I do know is if you play AFL Fantasy this year, with all the Thursday night games in that format, you don't have a rolling lockout. What you do get on the Thursday night games is the opportunity that Dream Team and Supercoaches get every week with the vice captaincy loophole. The Essendon Footy Club have the most Thursday night games. Round 3, 5, 13 and 16 is when Essendon have those Thursday nights. So, yes, round 4 he comes up against Matty DeBoer in the GWS. That might turn you away from it. But if you're looking for a vice-captaincy option, he gives you something at the start of the year, and he actually gives you something off the multi-buy as well.
Yeah, I was going to say, and especially through the multi-buy when there's so much movement in the rankings, to get 2 shots at your captain there, that's very tasty.
Yeah, it's a pretty good option. Look, I really like him as a starting squad option in AFL Fantasy and Dream Team, even though he's got a pretty poor round 1 history in the past 2 years, like 50 and 23 is what he got in the past 2 years in AFL and Fantasy and Dream Team. One of them was a concussion, by the way.
I was going to say, yeah.
67 and 17, we're being harsh, but look, it's not his favourite round of the year.
No, it might not be, but yeah, that's perfectly fine.
Yeah, look, I like him in that format.
Yeah, very much so.
Supercoach, if you time the run right, maybe he has a poor game, maybe Matty DeBoer gets under his skin, really brings that scoring history down and the value's there. Don't mind him there too, but he needs to pretty much go about 110 from the point you get him to make that value selection.
That's it. And I think with him, Supercoach, I'm more content to wait and see there. I think given his price, he's not huge value to begin with on face presence at that level. But if he has a decent couple of first games, he's got DeBoer, I think he comes up against in round 4 or 5? Yep, round 4. There you go. By that stage, you'll know exactly where he's at, and if DeBoer takes his scalp again, then he'll be pretty cheap coming into round 6 or 7. So that, might not be a bad time for an upgrade if he's shown a bit of ceiling in that time around that game.
Yeah, it certainly could. Round 11, they play Gold Coast. That might be about a good time to have him there too. It's always a good time to play Gold Coast. Let's talk about where he goes in the draft. Different formats need a different strategy in how you rate him and rank him. Currently, based on 2019's averages for midfielders, he's ranked 8th in AFL Fantasy. But I'm seeing in some people's mock drafts at the moment, our friends at the Draft Doctors have that mock draft simulator you can go and check out, but I'm seeing even in there people jumping on him in the first round. Is he still a genuine first round, or is he someone we can wait till the second in that format?
Look, I think it's going to largely depend on whether you're drafting against someone who either owns him in the keeper league or is an Essendon fan.
Sure.
That's, I think, going to be the key factor, because this year we are seeing a lot of other mids being hyped up a lot more than he is at this point.
Yep.
And so from that point of view, I think he is the type of mid that is going to slide a little bit. If he's the 8th ranked mid coming in, And there's always, you're going to have Grundy and Gawn taken in the first round.
Yeah.
You're going to have Whitfield,
Probably
and
Lloyd.
Dustin.
Yeah.
Yep, and Lloyd, a handful of others taken off other lines. Even with a 12-man draft, you're still looking at, I would think, probably early to second mid-round is when Merrett's likely to go, unless someone has just got him as his boy and they're going to take him earlier.
Yeah, look, you'd be happy, if you, whether you land him at M2 and you're going, aggressively midfield, or if you choose to get one of those early picks in another line and lock him in as M1. Again, that's a really strong start to your draft.
Absolutely, that's a huge start, and that would be the sort of strategy I'd be looking to try and nail if I could.
All right, in SuperCoach, a little bit different, ranked 17th
hang
for
on,
midfielders.
Before we go on to that, though.
Oh, yes.
I do want to talk about him from a keeper draft point
Oh,
of view.
okay, of course you do.
He is actually the type of player this preseason. If you've got trading open before the March preseason games, he's the sort of player that I'd be making a sneaky inquiry on at the moment. If you don't own him, if you've got a hype mid on your list at the minute, like a Dunkley, for example. If I owned Dunkley and I didn't own Merrett, I'd be talking to the guy that owns Merrett and saying, "What would you give me if I put Dunkley on the table?" And if you can get Merrett and a first rounder, or Merrett and upgrade your third defender or third forward to being a genuine top tier, because someone's viewing Dunkley as that, and I'm using him as an example, but one of those real hype sort of mids at the minute. He's the sort that if you can get an upgrade out of that trade for a player that, realistically is going to average roughly the same. You can't predict too much of a difference between them. I'd be looking pretty closely at that, I reckon.
All right, I'm interested in that strategy too. I'm keen to see if someone would take a bite at him. In terms of SuperCoach, though, ranked 17th for midfielders there. Let's be honest, he's not a first-round pick, and he's probably not a second-round pick there. The earliest I'd feel comfortable, and maybe it's a reach in a SuperCoach format, is a third-round pick. Chances are he'd be there available in a few fourth-rounders, though.
Yeah, I think that's probably about the mark. If you're picking him up as probably your second sort of midfielder there in that third or fourth round after you've taken one or two players on other lines, that's not a bad outcome.
He doesn't miss games.
I wouldn't be confident taking him too much earlier.
Yeah, look, third round is probably a little bit of a reach for me. Fourth round feels about the right time to get him in a SuperCoach format.
Yep, I tend to agree.
All right, mate. Appreciate your thoughts on Zach Merrett.
Very welcome, anytime.
If you want to go and check out the article on him, you can check that out at coachespanel.tv while you're there. All the other players of the 50 most relevant you can check out. Access to our Patreon is found through there, where you get exclusive content and early access to these podcasts. Also over at coachespanel.tv, some other articles helping you identify some breakout and some watch list candidates for your 2020 fantasy footy season. The number 21 player, the 50 most relevant, drops tomorrow, and another special guest joins me on the podcast.